Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Singularity Lab, your home for breaking science, technology, and futurism. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here. What's going on, Mr. Barr, Matthew Riot in the house, Akashi Chris, UAP, the GOAT. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got an amazing show for you today. I'll go ahead and introduce you to our co-hosts, Kristen Mataluni. Kristen, how are you today?
Good.
Fantastic. And Luis Jimenez. Luis, what's going down, brother?
Nada mucho. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm excited. I've been trying to line this interview up for a hot minute, and
this is going to be really fun.
I know.
I think I've seen Brooks's work. But yeah, after the conversation, that just a very short intro, I was like, "Whoa, okay, this will be fun." I'm gonna sit back and listen to this one. Get your popcorn ready,
we'll
folks.
See about that. We'll see about that.
Yeah, no, I never do that. That's a complete lie. That is a complete lie. It is my curse and gift.
Yes, we also have Brooks, who's going to be joining us. He's another co-host, and he actually works for Lockheed Martin. But we'll just keep that on the down low, just between me, you, and the internet, Lou.
No, well, that's all you ever get. Like that, you get the title, and then nothing else is.
Right. Where he's like, so tell us about those metamaterials. He's like, I do finance, bro. Like, calm down. All right. So as per usual here at the Singularity Lab, we're always trying to figure out what are our biases? What are our logical fallacies? In what ways are we misconstruing situations? Remember, it's not your fault. The human brain is trying to process a lot of information, and so logical fallacies and cognitive biases will always be popping up. Today's logical fallacy is ambiguity. Using double meanings or ambiguities of language to mislead or misrepresent the truth. Here's an example. When the judge asked the defendant why he hadn't paid his parking fines, he said that he shouldn't have to pay them because the sign said fine for parking here. And so he naturally presumed that it would be fine to park here.
That makes sense to me in a court of law. You know?
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know about that one. Maybe it's just a bad example.
A judge. He deals with those people all the time.
Well, actually, you're probably right. There are probably a lot of people who try to make excuses by claiming ambiguity.
Well, I was going to say there's a lot of ambiguity going on right now. I was also, because I'm catching up on a lot of content that I missed here in the last week, and right after this, I still got some more uncling to do, and including tomorrow. But I was catching up on the John Greenwald video where he's describing what's going on between OSAP versus ATIP, and who was in control of what, and when, and how, and who, and why. And the stories are different. We're getting a different story from Lou Elizondo than we're getting from Hal Puthoff and the gentleman Colm Kelleher and George Knapp, and and this, who's telling the truth? Why is there so much ambiguity with this?
and are there situations where these are all human beings who forget things, who have we all embellish things, we have false memories. I mean, there's so many ways that the human brain can get things wrong. And they're all human beings.
Yeah. Well, it's why John's been getting a lot of heat the last few days.
As usual,
because he's making us question our belief systems. And it's tough. It's tough. But we have to look at the information, and we have to come to the conclusion that yes, there is ambiguity in this. Like, okay, who's telling the truth? And we have a right to ask these tougher questions. When we do interview him. Doesn't have to be rude, doesn't have to be confrontational, goof on. But you can ask these tough questions without being a jerk. There's a way to do it. And if they dodge a question, they dodge a question. But even in a dodge, there's an answer,
Right.
But if you don't ask the question, you'll never know. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about and look at there. But it's interesting,
It is. It is indeed. Well, I am stoked because we have an amazing guest for you all today. His name is Chris Lehto. He's a retired, and I hope I didn't say it wrong. He's a retired F-16 pilot investigating UFOs and UAPs and the very substance of reality. He's working with a hypothesis about dark matter, life, and the nature of the universe. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Chris Lehto. Chris, how are you?
I was
Hello. Hey, guys. Great. Welcome to be here. Happy to be here. Well,
Yeah, it's great to have you. Make sure I did pronounce your name correct. It is Lehto.
I don't
right?
actually know how to even say it right. I don't know. I think it's Lehto.
How do you
It's
say it?
finished. I say Lehto, like late, but then no one can ever spell it correctly if I say it that way. So I think it's Lehto, like it's finished, like Lech. You're supposed to like aspirate the H or something.
Lehto.
So I don't know. Lehto. I don't care how you say it, to be honest.
Let's figure this out here for the next 2 hours. let's. I'm gonna go. Yeah, Lehto.
So
I think
you're going,
Lehto. Yeah, that's how
Okay.
I say it. I don't know if it's correct.
I'll say it like you say it.
Yeah.
I have this problem too with my first name, like because it's Luis. Luis is actually the way you say it, and then people go, "Oh, Louis." Sure.
Which you often don't mind, yeah.
No, don't mind at all. Or they just go straight to Lou. Usually that's what happens. They just bypass exit Luis and Louis and go straight to Lou. Full bore.
It's fascinating.
I actually don't care, and people will try to pronounce my name very carefully because there's so many iterations of Kristen, Christina, Kirsten, and Karsten, and I'm like, what? Just spit it out. I'll get it.
Right. Just call me. I don't trust it. I don't trust a Kirsten though. A
Kirsten?
A Kirsten.
Kirsten?
I never trusted a Kirsten. I'm teasing. Come on. All right, so let's get to it. Chris, you recently launched your YouTube channel. It's gaining a lot of traction. People are very interested in what you have to say. I think a lot of that stems from you being a former F-16 fighter pilot and being very interested in this UFO UAP phenomenon. But you also have a lot of other interests, which we'll get to later. But if you could kind of kick us off and just tell us a little bit about what about your background and then what caused you to decide to launch your YouTube channel.
Yeah, excellent. I grew up in Houston, ended up going to the Air Force Academy. I kind of was not from a military family or anything. My uncle went to the military. My parents were actually hippies. They lived out on I was born in a snail house out in New Mexico. So I applied to the Air Force Academy. A friend in my physics class kind of talked it up, and I went to visit, and it was beautiful. They don't yell at you when you go to visit. They're like, they just show you around. It's very nice. So I ended up going. It was amazing education, just super intense. It's very, very difficult, but learned a ton. I did a material science degree, but I've always been interested in chemistry and physics, and really just trying to figure out. Just very interested in what's going on in the world. I wasn't religious, so I've read many of the religious texts. I'm just curious on what these people have been thinking their whole lives. So that I've always had a curious interest in that. Joined the military. I had an amazing career for 20 years flying F-16s, so traveling all around the world. So yeah, amazing career, and then retired last year. And we decided to live in Europe. So my family, I have 3 kids. And so we moved to Portugal. So moved here, live here in Portugal. That's why it's late here actually. And then I started making YouTube videos to pick up a second career, more to impress my kids. I think really anything, just to make a video every week. That's really what I challenge myself with. So I make a video every week. And then this UAP stuff just happened back in May. I just made it happen to make a video. No one was really watching my videos. I was making videos about NFTs, financial independence, just new technology was basically what the channel was about. Got on UAPs, and then that video just hit, like you said. I think because I had all that experience, as F-16, so I randomly know all this stuff. It's kind of just surprises me. And so I made those videos. It took off, and so here we are. And now I just, I'm learning so much. Like Luis, you were talking about just trying to keep up on stuff. But yeah, learning so much, man. There's just so many cases. I just every day I learn about a new case, my mind's just blown again. I'm like, whoa, and I tweet or I don't tweet. I try not to tweet that much. But I wrote, somewhere else, hey, you guys know about this? And they're like, yeah, we know about that. You know, like the Robert Solis.
Welcome to the party, Chris.
Yeah, like, welcome. Yes, we know it's amazing. So yeah, so here I am, and I've seen your show for a while, Singularity Lab. It was so cool, just the topic of your whole channel. I was just I'm very happy to be on. You know, I'm just happy people are asking me to talk about stuff. You know, still amazing.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate you coming on, and you know this idea. And I actually was watching one of your episodes recently, and you brought up the idea of the technological singularity. So I want to get into that
Cool.
a little bit later as well. I'm going to go ahead and bring in our other co-host, Brooks Lopez. Brooks, how are you?
Hey, great. How about yourselves?
Excellent. Great to have you. We've told everybody what you do for a living, who you do it for, and all the metamaterials you have. So we'll get into that later.
Excellent. Always good to be debriefed before
Yes. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up on that. But Chris, yeah, could you kind of give us a little, kind of a reference point? So you were obviously an F-16 pilot. I imagine that the Tictac and David Fravor and Alex Dietrich's experience was something that was probably the first thing you heard since it broke in the New York Times. Is this what brought you into your interest in this? And to what level does having your flight experience give you some insight into their incident?
Yeah, it was 100% that interview with David Fravor on Lex Fridman. On his channel. You know, I watched that like straight through. I started watching 11 at night and then, didn't put it down. And really just the experiences. I just know all the words he's talking about. You know, when he references the sight pictures, you know, we talk a lot about sight pictures. You know, what do you see? What do you do? What do you see? Perspective from the enemy jet, you know, and then what do you do with your left hand, right hand? That kind of basics. We do so much chair flying, you know, where you're simulating, you go back through procedures in your head constantly. And so when he just talked, it was like, I felt like I was there essentially. I've never observed anything, you know, I've never observed any UAPs at all. But when he talked through that whole interview, it just felt like I was there. So I felt like I credibly, you know, I didn't quite see something, but I feel like I was almost there, you know, if that makes sense.
Right. And so you spent, you've talked to Mick West, you've talked to FLIR experts, you've talked to quite a few different people about this incident. What do you make of it now, having, heard his accounting of it and having talked to so many different people and from different perspectives? What are your thoughts on this Tic-Tac?
I mean, the Nimitz, it's still like the go-to event, right? We just have the most people have saw it, you know, like Gary Voorhees. I talked to him, but he was watching them with binoculars over like a week time frame, you know, for how many days. Just the amount of people that have seen it or have information. I mean, it's just amazing. Kevin Day, all those guys, and then just the 4 air crew. You know, Dietrich, you already mentioned, but Fravor. And then they all saw it. They all had the similar experience. They came back and relayed their experience. And really the power of it, you know, if that happened today, I think we could maybe come up with some, you know, there's some technological advancements, you know, somehow we have this hologram technology or something.
It was a bunch of drones.
2004, yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think that capability even exists today, but it's not as big a jump, you know, but you go back to 2004. So I don't see how it could possibly be done. You know, it would be such an advancement.
Right. What do you make of the argument that people will say, well, you know, the U.S. government is 30 years ahead. Do you think that it's possible? I mean, and again, like the idea that this object was drones, that to me, even today, like that would make a lot of sense unless it was some sort of cluster. But you look at all the details of the recounting of the event, this object being a single physical object, moving back to the cap point. It certainly is one of the most unexplained, that we're kind of dealing with. And I don't know. The idea that it could even be drones today, that wouldn't make a lot of sense to me, because
Agreed.
how are you
It was really just a logical fallacy into itself, right? So my joke was, I don't know if you saw, but
he's like, my joke, if you didn't get it,
Logical
Mataluni.
fallacy.
But the like if you saw the Dia de los Muertos drone flight in Mexico 2 days ago, 3 days ago, beautiful, incredible. But even now, like you said, 2021, making it look like a single, vascular object, unlikely.
Right.
Yeah, it's the overlapping fields of stuff too, because you had Kevin Day, right? So he's the kind of the first person that saw him, I guess, on the radar. So he's seeing him with this brand new radar. And they're doing stuff that normal drones can't do. A normal drone, at least that I know about, can't hover at 28,000 feet, or it can't fly at 28,000 feet at 100 knots, which is quite slow, actually. Because planes need airflow going over the wings, right? So as they go up higher, your air gets much less. So at 18,000 feet, you have half the air you have
Yeah, you need a ton of lift
at sea level. Yeah, you have half the air, right? Because the molecules are much further apart. So a plane actually has to go faster up higher, because otherwise it'll descend, because it weighs the same. The plane weighs the same, but you need the same amount of thrust or lift going up. I'm sorry. So you need the same amount of lift. So you have to go through the air faster. So at 28,000 feet, like Brooks, maybe you can back me up. F-16 can't fly at 100 knots.
Not even close. It would be a
feet.
paper-weighted.
Maybe you could point it almost straight up,
If your thrust was only vertical, yeah, maybe. But no, even you could go at 100 knots, but the force necessary to do that would be very high.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it's possible, because up that high, your afterburner is not going to light fully. There's just not enough air. So the fact that a drone could even do that is, I don't see how it could. They did make that helicopter from Mars. That Mars helicopter. That's pretty amazing technology, because there's no atmosphere on Mars. It's like 1% of the U.S. It's 1% of Earth.
It's 1%.
So that helicopter could fly at 60,000 feet if it was at Earth. But it's super light. It's designed just for that. So
and that's the Opportunity's the other rover. What's the?
We covered this when they did it. I can't remember.
Yeah, the helifoil.
Come on, chat. We believe in you.
I should know. But that's just one point. Where that
ingenuity.
A drone couldn't do that. And then so that's just your first point. And then you say, okay, it can make these amazing speed changes, these amazing altitude changes. Drone can't do that. But maybe you could say, okay, maybe there's two drones, and somehow they can like blink on and off. But again, I don't know how you could do that. And then we get to the visual when they talk about, actually seeing the thing do all these crazy maneuvers. So that's another sensor essentially. You have the radar, you have eyeballs censoring it, and then we have FLIR. And then, you have Underwood, right? He's going to try and find this thing. He's going to intercept it, and it's just gone afterwards. That's weird, because fighters, we're the fastest thing out there, right? Unless missiles, right? Missiles are faster.
But they leave a trail. You're going to have a heat signature. There's a lot of things that would.
Yeah, there's nothing that we couldn't catch up to,
Because usually you'd either have a heat signature, you'd have an electromagnetic field that would be picked up by several of the instruments. There's a lot of things, a lot of traces that should be left regardless of what may have been there.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like that combination of things in 2004 is really, for me, I don't know how you could come up with another, solution for that. I get, crazy hologram technology, but then it also reflects radar. Right, so you could say, okay, maybe they have this crazy laser technology, right? I was researching. Supposedly we have technology where you can send audio signals, right? Supposedly through lasers. I don't know how this works, but maybe we could do some sort of crazy laser system, and it makes this Tictac,
Definitely not in 2004. Definitely not in 2004.
Yeah, but even then, right? Even if you did it today, how does that reflect radar energy? How do you bounce something off of that if it's just light?
It'd be stealth, wouldn't it? I mean, it wouldn't.
Yeah, so then it would have to be. Honestly, I don't know how it would work, because it could be a hologram, right? Because some of these things move like light. We talk about, people have seen the lights. Most people I talk to, they just say it flies off at this incredible speed. That's really what cues them off that this is something different. So, you can do that with a light, right? If you have a laser, you could point it at the wall and then move it really fast, right? It's kind of how these things are moving. But if you're doing that in the air, what is reflecting the radar energy? If I shoot a radar at it, so I emit radar energy, it's bouncing off of something.
Right, yeah.
So it'd have to be like a drone that's out there, but then also uses this crazy hologram technology, but then somehow disappears. I don't know. I mean, the solution, it seems harder than if it was just extraterrestrials.
Right. I got the image of something messing with us, like cats. How people play with the laser pointer.
Like future humans, maybe, as Apollo 11 says with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Apollo 11. If whoever pilots the UAP can time travel, perhaps that's how they knew the future location of Fravor's cap point. This is a theory that quite a few people have. Jack Sarfati, Michael Masters, Bradley Voorhees, several people are hypothesizing the potential for, time traveling humans who have discovered anti-gravity.
We all know if that were the case, they would have showed up to Stephen Hawking's birthday.
That's true. And can you explain to everybody why that's true?
So the late, great Stephen Hawking sent out a birthday invitation after his birthday for any future time-traveling humans to please attend, and the attendance was it was minuscule, to say the least.
But maybe they were only interested in like a sports almanac, Brooks.
That's possible. It's very possible. It's also entirely possible they all showed up in a giant Tic-Tac formation at exactly one time. Because if you can time travel, you can belay gravity, I would assume.
Right.
And that's an assumption, but that's what it is.
That's a bold assumption, but I think it is interesting. And when you think about the potential possibilities, and I don't think you can take anything off the table. I think it's very difficult to say, and it continues to be fascinating. I mean, it's just an extraordinary experience.
And do you think time travel is possible backwards? It seems like time travel forward would be possible, I guess.
This is what, and I've listened to quite a few physicists talk about this, and most of them say, well, we know time travel forward is possible, right? Because we can easily look at the theory of relativity, and it 100% is possible. Like there's no doubt, there's no theoretical doubt in a theoretical physicist's mind that future time travel is possible. Most will say that backward time travel is not possible, but that is not a foregone conclusion in the physics community. There's dispute within the physics community about whether or not it is possible.
And there's also dispute as to what backwards means, right? So we're thinking of time being linear in that particular spectrum. That's, as far as the physicists that I read frequently, that's probably unlikely, that time would not be in a singular dimension, just like space isn't. And then it just makes the question a very deep rabbit's hole.
Yeah, it is. And I've read a couple articles about some speculations about backward time travel and how it is possible based on some extraordinary math. But the idea is that there's no destroying the timeline, because the timeline is simply in constant flux. And it's not a line. It's not a line. Luis told us he was not going to talk today, and I think he's actually not going to talk. Oh, he's muted.
That explains a lot. Well, I just have a head cold, so I don't want to interrupt with that. But I was going to say, what about the idea, just going back real quick to the drone thing, and then we can go back to time travel, because that's really fun too. But this idea of because McGowan would share on the show all the time that there are drones that can fly for 24 straight hours. They can actually use at depending on the height. I'm not an expert at this, but if the drone is at the proper height, the winds, like you were saying, are a lot higher. So if you had an object that was light enough that could propel itself just enough and put itself in a wind current where it's not using fuel or battery life to stay suspended in the air. What do you think about that theory?
So that's below where the 28,000 foot mark is. At 28,000 feet, you're not going to get heavy winds because there's, as Chris was saying, there's just not that much atmosphere up there. Because correct me if I'm wrong, Luis, but I think you're talking about we were discussing UAPs and like the weather balloon conversation, and how it is very easy at a certain altitude to traverse long distances with very little power. But where Chris is talking, I mean, there's not that much atmosphere up there. You or I would be troubled to breathe up there.
Okay, but what about these drones? What about these drones that can operate? I know there are definitely commercial drones that can operate 8 hours at the very minimum.
Sure, and again,
and we're talking propeller drones.
We're talking now, not 16, 17 years ago, and that's a huge differential in technology, particularly when you're talking about drones.
Well, but I will say though, isn't it fair to say that those companies had, if the tech is available commercially now, that means that 16 years ago somebody might have been using it.
And so Mike, this was your quote earlier. And when was that quote? The U.S. government and military technology is 30 years ahead of commercial. When was that quote stated?
Well, we
state it on this show all the time.
We stated on the show.
When was it initially stated?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question, but we have had, like John Greenwald said, 50 years. I believe Lou Elizondo has thrown out 30 years.
Did we pick it up from a Dan Brown book?
No, I don't think so. And actually, Luis, I think I was there for that 50 years conversation because I don't necessarily disagree. But my question is, when was that initially stated? Because the difference between technology in the 60s and the 90s is less than technology between now and 6 years ago.
Oh, you're saying there's an exponential growth factor?
I mean, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to pick up.
I'm not going to say that as an employee
in front of me and hold it up or anything. But yeah, that might be my point.
I think you have this. There's some technologies where they can be way far ahead, but like the internet, the military wasn't. They didn't invent the internet before it was invented.
They were not early adopters, were they?
Well, I think when it comes to drone technology, I think our military has been messing with this stuff for a very, very, very long time.
I agree with that.
And if I'm seeing a commercial drone that has a flight time of 8 hours and that can be swarmed and that can switch out equipment, say radar track, these are commercial drones. You can put radar tracking on these things. You can put all sorts of instruments, listening devices, all sorts of stuff on a commercially available drone. And it is just one of these drones, if I'm not mistaken, was in the neighborhood of $250,000. Like, this is like a really high-tech piece of equipment. And I'm looking at this thing and I'm going, oh God, I could imagine just putting a set of light on these things, some LEDs, putting them in a swarm in the sky, boom, UFO sighting. This could have easily been the Phoenix Lights in 1993. Would not shock me if we had this type of tech in the 90s.
So
is that crazy?
The one thing that I think we didn't have in the 90s, and the one thing that I think that commercial is almost egalitarian to, is battery technology. Elon Musk has, God rest his soul, whatever alien this replaced him.
Wait, what do you know?
He's dead.
But battery technology has come a long way since the reinception of the electric vehicle. And that was one of the industries that we've been so far behind on. We can make super processors that are moving so fast. We basically have the ability to produce the drones. We didn't have the battery to power them until the past 3-4 years.
Excellent point.
But they might have been. But here's what I'm going to say. My counter to that is, because I agree with you, is that what about gasoline? A gasoline drone that high in the sky,
combustion engines.
I don't think you'd hear it.
It's not about the sound. The issue is that gasoline's not going to work that high up. One of the reasons that we use things like jet fuel and rocket fuel is because they have a much different chemical composition than just typical combustion. Typical combustion has to release CO2 and H2O. and energy, right? So you would essentially be creating a ton of water and carbon dioxide so high up in the atmosphere that you'd be heavier than the air around you. There's no way a combustion engine will work that high up.
Well, are there any other types of engines that could work that high up, or possibly
Very
a
large
fuel
rockets,
mixture?
as far as I'm aware, very large rockets, and that'd be it.
Well, you
So
just need large wings. You need
but
much larger wings.
That's true.
how high are we talking about here, though?
Well, we're talking about, if we go back to the incident in question, we're talking about at least 28,000 feet, because that's where the F-16s were when they kind of made an initial recognizance of it, right?
Right.
That's what Kevin Day was seeing on the radar tracks.
About 28,000 feet.
Yeah, and then when they intercepted him Underwood, I don't know what altitude he was at actually. 25,000. So they were right
but
around
I mean,
25.
still same neighborhood. There's no way a regular combustion engine would be feasible up there.
Well, in the case of the Nimitz, I 100%.
That thing wasn't moving like that was not a combustion engine.
No, I don't think so.
Either. It's a good question, though. It's a good question.
Right. Right.
But what I was gonna say is, I don't necessarily mean in the case of the Nimitz. I mean, I'm thinking of the Phoenix Lights encounter, where people saw this. There's a mass sighting. It wasn't super high. It was just above the mountain range. These where I don't think the air is as thin. But again, I
think you're right there.
Just to cause narratives to get people talking one way when you're testing something completely different. To me, I think that's where this conversation really stands out. But in the case of the Nimitz and the Go Fast and the Tictac, this does not fit that, in my opinion. But then again, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
if you're looking like mountain, like peaks of mountain down, keep in mind that the highest mountain range in the world is the Himalayas. You got like K2, Everest, and a few other summits that are above the cloud range, mostly above the cloud range completely. But even then, you're talking about 18,000 to 19,000 feet, right? So 28,000 feet is, call it an Everest and 3/4, just to give people perspective, right?
Right.
I think Everest is 28,000 though. I think
is it 28? I'm sorry, I said 18. Yeah. Is it 28? Okay.
Yeah, I think it is.
There
yeah.
you go. So you are so high up that it would be almost impossible to traverse it without oxygen unless you were a superhuman. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is, because I've been to a mountain range that's 17,000. It's nowhere near Everest. Yeah. So 28,000. That's where these F-16s are flying. And it's high enough that oxygen assistance is normally, we'll call it normally required for an everyday human being. If you're talking about a mountain in the Appalachians or in the Rockies, 12,000 would be the highest. And that's very reasonable to believe that something could get up there and produce light. Maybe.
We have, there's Global Hawk. That's a giant, it's a big drone though. And that it flies at like 60,000 feet actually. It's really high. But it has it has a turbojet engine. It doesn't have just a normally aspirated engine like a Cessna. It uses a turbo or a jet engine technology called a turbojet.
Yep.
Yeah, it combines a jet turbine with a propeller. And then we have Predators. I think that's maybe what you're thinking of, Luis, is it's not commercial, but in 2004, we did have Predator UAVs, and they can fly for like 10 or 12 hours. So they can fly a long time. I mean, I'm just pulling that out. That's just a random kind of guess, I think. But they can fly for, I think up to 10 hours.
But they're quite noticeable as well. If they were to come down, you would notice that's a Predator drone. It's not some small
but they have long wings. They fly slow, right? Predator only goes like 100 knots or something.
It glides quite a bit while it's up there too, and that's one of the reasons its battery life is so sustainable. Yeah,
well, it doesn't need a cockpit, so all it is like a Cessna engine with a few sensors, and then the body essentially, and these really really thin long wings. The Global Hawk I think it's 60-foot wingspan. It's 30% bigger than a Viper, than an F-16. Yeah. So they can fly a long time, but they're slow, Luis, and we would see them. That's what I'm curious. Like all these intercepts. The Go Fast, the gimbal, and then even the Flea or Tictac. When you're getting these videos, they're trying to intercept. So I'm trying to wherever he's flying, wherever the Tictac or whatever it is flying. I'm trying to fly my plane to get within a mile of it, so I can see it. So they're trying to intercept it. And I'm curious what happens after. And that's where I'm saying, like, there's nothing that can get away from us. You know, it's like a shark in the ocean. You know, you jump in the ocean, and imagine you're the shark. Okay, you're gonna circle around something like, hey, what is that? You know, can I eat it?
Right.
And it's the same thing. You know, I talked to my buddy last week. You know, I was like, hey, what would you do? He's an F-16 guy. If you saw like a balloon, man, have you seen a balloon? You know, and he's like, I would just turn around and go look at it again. You know, so you just turn around and go circle around. So it's kind of like, I would think of it like the shark, you know, and the fighters, they were, you know, up until recently, I guess, till drones, we were the great white, you know, there's nothing, well, maybe a killer whale. We were the killer whales.
The orcas of the sky.
Yeah, we were the orcas,
Yeah,
right? They eat the sharks. But yeah, so I think we would catch it. So if it is a drone, so the drone technology, I guess, did exist, but not the combination of things. It's up that high. It's only going 100 knots. We would be able to get to it. You know, we'd be able to intercept it easily.
Right. What do you think about this question? Thank you, NM UAP, for the $5 donation. Chris, do you know if cap points are stored digitally on the airplane?
Yeah, I think so. So like a normal cap point, I think they were going out to just do practice 1v1 intercepts against each other. So you just, you know, you practice, they go to one end of your airspace and then you go to the other, like 30 miles apart. And then you're trying to do an intercept. So if you look from above, right, this plane's going this way, I offset this direction, right? And now I'm making this intercept happen. So I come in from the side, right? So he can't see me. And you do it vertically as well. So as I offset, I'm going to go down, you know, you can't really see, but I'm going to go down and then make this is actually a vertical intercept. So they can't see, right? Because we always look on the horizon. You don't look up or down, actually. So you come from up or down, like a shark again. Like
right.
And so that's an intercept. So they go out. So you use cap points, right? I'm going to go to the east cap. You go to the west point. And so, you know, and then you make it simple, right? Everything's very simple. So no one makes any mistakes because we're talking about, you know, could be dangerous situations. So usually you just have these cap points. And for every mission, you can either pick them or you can just use already pre-established ones. And normally we just use pre-established ones, right? Especially if it's just a basic training mission. Like, you know, I'm not like making this scenario like we're going into Iran and there's, you know, all these missile systems and all these enemy fighters. You do that sometimes to make it like more realistic and more training. So
well, don't
maybe
say Iran though. That hasn't happened yet. That's hypothetical.
He tried. Trump tried.
They've been beating that drum for a while.
No, we don't need any more wars. I think
that's my point, Chris. Yes, please don't.
Yeah,
please don't put that into people's minds.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Chris is retired, so he doesn't have much of a say.
Yeah, it sounds weird when you say it. I guess you're in it though. It's just normal. That's just what you're doing. Yeah, so I think for this, they just went out for a regular intercept, like a daily practice kind of thing, working on the basics. You know, the pilot was new, she was new, Dietrich, so I think they're just training her. So it's all focused on her, and I think they just picked what was already there. That would be my guess. When I looked at the cap point that they used, it was just the actual longitude and latitude lines. You know, so they just picked like the easiest number to type in because you can type it in. Yeah, they asked. Normally we'd have it in the system. So if this is a normal airspace, we could put in 1,000 points. So we would code in. We're all, you know, always trying to be lazy, you know, make it easier. So we would code in all the standard points. So, and you know, long answer is I think it was coded in. It's probably just the basic. They just picked this point as the normal cap point for the airspace. So I think personally, if anyone was watching them fly, they would see them go to this point on a day-to-day basis because that's the normal airspace.
Right.
It's like a tennis court. You know, you're going to go to tennis court 3, right? That's like your missionary. But some of the airspaces are built different. Some are square, some are triangle, you know, based on all the outside factors.
But you still know the fields. And so if they did give you a one, you know what the field looked like, at least from a area perspective.
Yeah. And these just look like normal practice fields. It's out over the ocean. Right over the land, your airspace gets all different shaped, right? Because you have different airways coming in, or this mountain, or you know, land border or something. But over the ocean, they just divide it up, you know, like avenues and streets, you know, in the Midwest or something, you know. So I think they picked the easiest one. That's what I think. And
Right.
it's weird that he went there, that the Tic Tac was located there. And I guess they said it was right on the point, right on the
cap
intersection of
The
the
access
two.
point.
Yeah. So that's weird. But yeah, I'd say it's stored in the jet. It's probably written on all of their publications, right? If you got a hold of their in-flight guide, which I don't think it's classified, but it's, we don't pass them around. We keep it, it's not sensitive, but you don't pass the in-flight guide around, but that has all the points.
So
if
someone
anyone
needs
had
to
that,
submit an inquiry for public record for the flight guide for that one.
in-flight guide. Yeah. If you found the in-flight guide for that unit or that base, actually,
John
and
Greenwald?
it's probably standard across even the wings. It's probably standard for the airspace. Actually, normally they'll throw out points like this is this is MS-17 East Point, MS-17 West Point.
So
And
someone out there could hypothetically make an inquiry for public record for the flight guide, because I'm assuming the flight number is publicly available at this point.
Yeah, you just need an in-flight guide for that whole area.
Interesting.
It's normally the wings produce it. In the Air Force, it's produced by each base. It's your standardization evaluation shop. They will print this guide.
Somebody go do that.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to clip this and just put it out there.
What do you think? Here's a quick question from Akashi Chris, $5 donation. Thank you so much. Follow up to UAP. If that is true, how feasible is it that it was hacked? So, in addition to that, so it's one thing to go back now and figure out what that cap point was through freedom of information, but it's another thing for an object to identify what their cap point was in flight. Is that something that could be digitally hacked from the flight, or is it possible that somebody else could have known that ahead of time?
Yeah, I think it's common knowledge. Yeah, if you're flying in that area, everybody uses it. I bet whoever's flying there tomorrow is probably using that point, that cap point. They're looking right now in their little in-flight guide. It fits on your leg, and they're like, "What's that point?" And the idea is if it changes, right? So a lot of times you'll have like weather. You'll go to tennis court 4, whatever they call it, warning area 4. And it's full of weather, and you're like, oh shit, all right, I got to make something happen. You call around, you make sure this other area. So you look in your in-flight guide and you see, okay, what are we going to do now? Okay, hey 2, you go to the West Point. Okay, you go to West Point, I go to East Point. We'll start the fight the same way we briefed. So I think it just sounds like a common point to me.
Right, and so
you don't need to hack anything. You just go look in trash cans or look on the internet for.
Or if something was doing some aerial surveillance, they would be able to.
But there are two different possibilities. So I'm just trying to break down all the possibilities of what the Tic Tac was, and so you have the possibility of it being, we've already addressed that if this physical object was behaving the way that the sensors were reading it and these pilots were reading it. It is an anomalous craft. It is insane. It is something far beyond the technology we think we have. That being said, if we were to kind of break it apart even further and say, okay, let's say it was U.S. technology, then it would certainly be possible for another branch of the military or the same branch of the military to have that information to be able to know where that cap point is. Or if it was, and another possibility being if it is adversarial or it is a true unknown, is it possible for the true unknown, which wouldn't have access to military data, be able to grab those coordinates directly from the plane digitally? I think those are two things that we need to kind of break down.
Yeah. I think it would be obvious, or I guess not obvious, but relatively obvious. If you're watching this from an overhead view, when we go and debrief the flights afterwards, everyone carries a tracker, right? So you have a little GPS tracker on your jet. Somehow it's like in a pod or something. So afterwards, we know where everybody was at the time. So we go back and we say, okay, I shot a missile at this point, and then we wait and we say, okay, you die. We figure it out what actually happened. You come to a logical conclusion. We call it. If you were watching that afterwards, you would be able to tell where that cap point is, right? Because you're going to see the planes basically go into this point. They're basically going to go to this point and then they're going to turn. and fly a little orbit. And maybe the wind will mess them up over here, but they're always going to go back to they'll touch the cap point, and then they're going to fly in orbit. And sometimes they fly terrible orbits, right? The wind or just bad piloting. But they're always going to come back to that cap point. So you would be able to tell if you were watching it, you would see this circle, and you would see one of the apexes always touching this one point.
Interesting.
So I don't know. That's one possibility, or it's somehow they got the intel that this is the point. I mean, I would guess that they just somehow saw planes at this point orbiting and went there.
Well,
Right.
so Mike, to your point, even if you're adversarial, you would have satellite records that were able to identify what the cap points would be, most likely, just because you can watch flights, even if you don't know what number they are, what branch, what anything else, you could still see where the flights consistently moved, right? And I think the same would be said if you're a complete unknown, only in the sense that even if you sat in the atmosphere for a couple of days and looked at a particular area, a given quadrant, you would be able to pick out cap space for any place that there were frequent flights. So
yeah,
I mean,
that's more the feeling I get is that they're using these every day as their cap point. It just doesn't seem like such a big deal to me. I mean, it means that they knew that they were flying there, almost that they were observing the flights before,
Right.
or they noticed that the planes they go to this point a lot. That would be my inclination, but I don't know for sure. To be honest,
doesn't that beg the question of, so the intention was to be observed? Well, attention.
One would imagine,
intention
right?
is a big word, but it certainly wasn't something that was trying to hide itself.
Right, and it's way outside of random, or would seem to be.
Agreed.
Yeah, it seems curious. It seems like a curious kind of move. I don't know.
I'm curious to know what you guys think of, like, when a Neil deGrasse Tyson comes out and says, first of all, he'll say something along the lines of, everybody's got one of these, and he'll whip out a cell phone and he'll say, why don't we get more pictures? Why don't we get more evidence? And then he'll look at the Nimics that go fast and all of this footage from our Navy and Air Force, and he'll say, well, why is it every time we get one of these videos it's super blurry? And why do we have to take this training video, because that's what this is, it's a video of pilots training who happen to catch something anomalous on their systems over a space in the sky that is not classified, yada yada yada, and he'll give all of these excuses and all of these reasons. I'm sure you guys have heard, but what's your first reaction when you hear someone say something like that?
I mean, I do get pissed off. I'm like, why don't they tell us more? Like, what is the deal? Like, what about the 30 seconds after that, the gimbal, or go fast, man? I would love to see the last, 30 seconds or a minute after the go fast video ends. I think that would just clear the debate. I'm like, we need more evidence does help. Like, more time of those videos being released would actually help. It would help a lot, because Rubber Duck, we could kind of nail down that it was, I don't think it was a UAP personally. I'm not 100% sure. Dave Falch, he's still not convinced. It's, he thinks it's still unexplained. But over that long, 40 minutes, we were able to really track down how fast it's moving. It didn't do any of these crazy maneuvers. The wind, we could check the wind over a long period of time. So we were able to there was enough evidence, there's enough data there that we could really dive in and be like, okay, this probably isn't unexplained. I think it's probably a latex balloon, which is weird. Carrying a metal, a spinning metal.
Well, apparently it's in a very it's that's a very popular place to run drugs over the border.
Exactly.
So
more data, but that's why I'm pumped for the Sky 360. I just made a video last week. So this new program, basically taking the torch from Sky Hub. Just to get more evidence, man, because I kind of see two fronts. I see you have Elizondo, Lou, Ryan Graves. Those guys are all doing I think kind of the congressional disclosure effort, U.S. centric disclosure effort. Robert Salas, just watched that media. His presentation was amazing. And then, but we haven't really gotten so much pay dirt with that, right? I guess you did get these recent videos, but then they were leaked. You know, has the U.S. government actually released any videos? You know, have they released any information?
Only 2 to 3 weeks after anything got leaked.
Yeah, well, they basically confirmed it, right? I don't know how much pressure.
Oh, it was 3 years. It took them 3 years to confirm, right?
Was it
2
that?
years?
Yeah, I guess it was. Some of it was. We're talking about the 2000. What was it?
17.
7 to 9, 10 video. Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, and Richard Hoff, his argument was, you know, your cell phone cameras, everybody does have one, but the aperture, you know, you look at the aperture, it's like this small, you know.
Yeah.
So that was my response too to Luis. Well, not to Luis, but to apparently Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I did not hear this quote, and I have a lot of choice words for the individual, regardless of that. But yeah, I mean, you take this phone. It's a great phone. It's got a great camera. If someone's posing and they're standing very still and they want their picture taken. But I mean, you try to take a picture outside your window of a bird that lands on the fence, and good luck with that, man. It's not a question of the integral quality of the camera for what it's used for, but we're not meant to take long stream pictures of flying apparatus.
Right. Well, I've been doing a real fun experiment. Anytime I see a military chopper or plane moving through the area, and I was just in San Diego, so I got to do that a lot. I would take a photo or a video of it, and then I would look at it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I can tell that's a helicopter from 3/4 of a mile away, but they're huge helicopter. You know, like an Osprey.
You also know what a helicopter looks like.
Correct. Yes.
Right. So
but here's the thing. You could also hear the helicopter from that far away.
Very true.
You know, which is all of these check marks, right?
But it's not just that. That initial cognitive bias, right? And that whole idea that some things that we are familiar with are so much more quickly identified than things we're not familiar with. So even if it was something that was within humans' technological abilities, if it's something you were just like, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah,
it'd be different because your brain doesn't process it that quickly. Add to the fact that helicopters only 8 to 12,000 feet up, so and they are huge, but they're not very high. So you've got a lot of factors going in there when you're trying to use just an everyday pedestrian device to. Right. So I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson can go fuck himself.
well, here's what I mean. The only place I will kind of agree with him on is that. Well, in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, we got these really crystal clear, awesome photographs. Some of them have been very difficult to debunk. Some of them are just hubcaps thrown in the sky and the picture's taken. But the photo equipment back then was a lot different than it is today. And I am curious, well, how come we don't get pictures like that anymore? You know, although even as I am doing this mental exercise when I do see military planes now, because it's also an exercise of, well, if I do see something weird, I'll be ready. You know, like I'll have the trigger response in my system to whip out my phone and see if I can get a good photo or video of it. And that takes a lot of discipline. Like if you're looking at something in the sky, you just kind of want to look at it. You don't want to be fumbling with your phone, going through an app and then taking a picture of it. So I can imagine if you saw something that didn't fit your understanding of what flight is, you know, I think it would take a lot of discipline to whip that phone out of your pocket and actually film it.
Sure.
So, I mean, you know, I kind of see what he's saying, but at the same time, I'm like, come on, dude, like, what's your deal?
But also to add to that, Luis, you have to keep in mind, you're talking about the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Any device that someone was already holding has a mechanical aperture that has a longer exposure time than our phone does.
Right.
And on top of that, your phone has, I mean, I don't know yours, but mine, I've got 2 different aperture lenses. One that's only trying to identify some sort of a distance relevation, because I'm not a photographer, so my phone's trying to be for me. Versus anyone just picking up a crappy old camera and snapping it, that's probably going to be better than my phone not having any idea what to focus on.
Right.
Yeah, so I had one theory. Just this kind of what Brooks mentioned is, they were all it was all analog tech back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. You know, and if you read that the Skinwalker book, I read that, and basically they have a lot of technological issues. You know, so if it is if it is real and you're technology, digital stuff is getting interfered with. That could be like a bad combination, right, Luis? Because you have short aperture stuff, but if it gets close to you, now your phones aren't going to work, right? So you may be in a position where you can't ever get that high def shot unless you happen to be ready with this zoom lens, right? And nobody's ready with the zoom lens, I guess. So maybe people have tried to get that close up shot, but their phones haven't worked or some issue.
I do like the idea of going backwards with the tech to record the phenomenon because it's analog.
Yeah.
Wow, that is a cool
old
thought,
school, man.
And then
old school works. Yeah.
Aaron, who does he works with Google for Apple apps that actually are for photography, and he mentions here that digital stabilization is making photos less and less accurate, which is interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, certainly not something. I was just gonna say, certainly not something I'm familiar with. The only course I've ever failed in my life was a photography course. I'm still not sure how I failed it. I took pictures. They just must have.
Did you develop them?
I did, with the f-stop and everything. I learned how to use the black room. Yeah, I did. But
did you go in there with a girl?
Did
you have a partner that was a girl? Because I don't. Of course, I was like, well, maybe I could get it.
They wouldn't allow it. It turns out
I was always trying to make out in high school. You know.
I should. Well, we'll talk about that.
NMUAP asks for a $10 with a $10 donation. I've run into a wall of thinking with I've run into a wall thinking this is us. Nimitz is 50, FA-18s are 25, F-16 is 40. If we had a Tictac, wouldn't we use it or at least show it off? Hypersonic are nothing compared to a Tictac. That's the question I always say. Like, I don't understand. If this was us, why on earth would this not be a technology that is in use? And how could it have not been in use for a long time? And if we are testing it, why do we only see it very randomly? What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the same. If the technology exists, it's still mind-blowing. It's still paradigm shifting. If you can do that, what I just explained, if you can somehow get a radar, bounce back radar energy, but then not break sound barriers and move around like your light. I mean, if it's human made, it's still mind blowing and paradigm shifting technology. And if it's alien made, it's still mind blowing paradigm shifting technology.
Or don't forget about those huge future humans.
The future
humans would have gone to Stephen Hawking's birthday. No one's going to let him down that bad, man.
Future humans will not let Stephen Hawking down. Okay.
Well, how do you know
the guy? Go ahead, Luis.
Sorry. So I was going to say, how do you know the tech's not being used?
Yeah.
Like, if we come out publicly with tech like that, then that means everybody knows.
Okay. So here's my rebuttal to that.
How do you hide it?
Very easily.
You can easily hide that. You can easily hide that. That being said, our own intelligence agencies would not have been surprised when China had a hypersonic it's not even an ICBM, a low orbit nuclear missile. What was that? 4 weeks ago?
Which nobody talked about. Like,
no one talked about it, but not only did no one talk about it, our intelligence agencies were surprised. It's not a surprise that they have it. The fact that our own intelligence didn't know about it, that's a concern. And
I'm sorry, this is where I'm like, I could easily see an intelligence community going, let's tell them it was let's tell them it was a surprise. I think they knew that thing existed.
If they were going to acknowledge that thing existed, it would have been leaked as an Israeli missile or a Saudi Arabian or Iranian or something. They would have not intentionally leaked information that the Chinese have technology that we are still working on.
Yeah, because that's that whole there's a whole section of society that's terrified about what China's doing, right?
There's a reason the space race was a thing, Kristen. You're absolutely right.
I shouldn't have laughed. I mean,
well, it's a serious topic, but I mean, what are we going to stop? We're going to stop being fun people? No.
From my perspective, that's the only thing that would give me pause about us having technology that's so far advanced that we could potentially be surprised by a hypersonic low orbit nuclear weapon.
Let me ask you this: do you think it's out of the realm of human ingenuity for us to have cracked this somewhere?
Yes,
They take
I
that?
do.
You really do.
I truly do. I don't think that we have zero energy, 0 point technology, whatever terminology you want to use, in which we could defy gravity. Only musicals from The Wizard of Oz.
I was already singing it.
But haven't there been patents put into patent offices on this type of technology?
It's fair, and that's an excellent point. And I find that to be a fascinating one, because if we go all the way back, at one point in time, our good friend Albert Einstein worked in the patent office and was very lamentative of the fact that he was told that all of the most important patents had already come to fruition, and this was in the
30s, late
30s?
40s, late 30s, late 30s.
Oh no, and I actually just crossed those two anecdotes. One was that Einstein worked there. The other was the gentleman who was the head of the U.S. Patent Office in 1910 said that he wanted to quit because all important patents had already been made.
Right.
But that being said,
people are bad at futurism. Real bad.
They are. And ultimately, just because they're trying to patent something now doesn't mean they have the technology. Facebook just changed their name to Meta. What was that, 3 weeks ago?
Like 4 days ago.
And it just so happens that a computer company in Arizona who has a trademark on the name will be making somewhere between $30 and $50 million off of it. So yeah, they're probably trying to patent it. That doesn't mean the technology's out there.
That's a good point. And also you also have to think about PSYOP too. Like the US Navy could patent things that they want the Chinese or the Russians to be afraid of.
They want Xi Jinping to go. They just patented, like, take poop out of your butt and throw it in the toilet without touching anything. That's clever.
No, I can't. Honestly, I just want to travel there just to try one of those things. But
what is happening?
Yeah, are y'all being serious? What just happened?
To try one of those toilets that you don't have to touch.
You don't have to touch?
Yeah, it's amazing technology.
What?
Yeah, you don't have to do anything. You just sit, do your thing, and it takes care of everything else.
It's just...
No, not a bidet. This thing will do all of it. Anyway, let's not go there. Let's not go there. What I was gonna say.
So there's a power sprayer in your toilet.
A vacuum.
No. It's not even a vacuum. It eliminates the existence of said waste, turns it into energy, recreates that said waste into matter elsewhere without ever touching you.
I'm so lost.
It's a toilet disposal.
I can't tell. Like, I just can't tell, like, to what extent I'm being fucked with. Like, I know it's a certain amount, but a certain amount is true.
Here's what I was gonna say is that if we're proposing here, let's just speculate that the technology, there is a there. There's something there that the military's been looking at, say, for at least 20 years, but probably better part of 60 years. So they know that the tech is possible. What would stop an unstoppable machine with an endless budget to try and crack that? Because I think it would be in our best militaristic interest to pursue something like that. And I mean, I have a hard time putting a limit on human ingenuity. And human ingenuity. And I mean, if we can get to the moon and back on something less as powerful as a Texas calculator, a Texas Instruments calculator, like, why can't we produce this? Why?
No, that's a great point. And part of it, it's almost like, are you guys familiar with, like, the 4-minute mile analogy? Like, before, until somebody actually, until somebody broke it. Like, people believed it was impossible to run a human being to run a 4-minute mile. And finally, I think it was in the 30s or 40s, somebody broke it. And as soon as they broke it, people were breaking it. Boom, 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 boom. So there is this thing where humans have this inability to see past their own bias and what's possible. And that's why we love, like, Bradley Voorhees on this show, because he's one of those guys, like, he just thinks past what other people think, and he's going to go try stuff. So it's a fascinating thing. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Melius for the $2 donation. I want alien toilets too. By the way, pump that Discord. So if you are here and you want to hang out behind the scenes, hang out with us after shows and things like that. Friday, we're doing our first live chat on Discord, Luis and I, after the show. So if you want to chat with us afterwards, click on the link in the description and check out Discord. Man, where were we?
We were talking about human ingenuity and know-how, and sort of this idea of if the tech is there, why wouldn't we try and pursue it?
So, Luis, I think you asked the question just beautifully. If you have an unstoppable monster with an unlimited budget, how could you not create this? Well, then obviously Jeff Bezos would already have it.
But Jeff, there's no apparatus of Amazon that is looking at this phenomenon. In other words, there's
drone technology. No,
I don't know, but I don't think there's, like, for example, the Secretary of the Navy coming to Jeff Bezos and going, "Hey, there's something there. It's lower on our priority list because we got to deal with North Korea, Iran, Africa, all sorts of civil war all over the world, all of these real world issues. But if we didn't have to deal with this, we'd absolutely be looking at this." I don't think anybody's reporting to Jeff or to Elon and saying, "Hey,
you're right.
On camera 7." You know, like, so.
And I think it's a well-asked question. I think that the best true response to that is that even though we, being, you know, the United States military industrial complex, have the largest budget, that doesn't necessarily make us. It certainly doesn't make us the most efficient
or innovative.
We do have or innovative. That's a great point. Probably makes us amongst the least innovative, because to truly innovate, you have to do more with less. And as you stated, we are essentially as funded as we could possibly be, right? So I think while innovation is certainly we're throwing the money at it, we're getting results, there's no doubt about it. I truly still at this point believe, if you ask me tomorrow, the United States could fight the rest of the world and probably win. And then if we ever got invaded, the rednecks would take care of us, I hope. But ultimately, between number 2 and number 10, you've got China, Russia, India. Israel's half of our budget. The rest of ANZAC's half of our budget. So my assumption would be that our technology is still amongst the highest, but there's competitors there that are doing a lot with what they have, and we haven't been seeing their stuff, right? You know,
I think it's easy to catch up. It's easy to catch up when you know. So I think you hit it right on the head there, Michael, about there's like a mentality block, you know. But I think if we know something is possible, I think we can make it happen. You know, like Luis, personally, I think we can actually, given a long enough time frame, I think we'll actually be able to make anything come to fruition. You know, I think humans will actually, if we don't kill ourselves immediately, you know, on the grand scheme of things, I think we'll, at least our societies, you know, the cultures we're building, I think they'll be able to actually make any future happen. But to answer your direct question, I think maybe what if we found like archaeological dig? You know, what if we had these, we located these craft or something, and then realized it was possible, and then devoted all of our math, you know, all of our, like you said, the monster, devote all of our energy to creating this. You know, I could see that where we have humans controlling this, basically alien technology, stolen alien technology, I guess, back engineered.
Right. And even, you know, and I wonder to what extent that the military is uninterested, because, you know, from what we've heard, they see, you know, unidentified flying objects or unidentified aerial phenomena all the time, and they just tend to ignore it, which boggles my mind, because why wouldn't you want to study and you know, ensure that you weren't being leapfrogged in some way? But we can speculate on that for years and years. But I wanted to ask you, Chris, you did a video recently on your channel about your hypothesis about dark matter, life, and the nature of the universe. And I found it fascinating. I actually watched the whole thing this morning.
Really awesome.
Yeah. Can you give us like a quick, I know it's not something you could break down quickly, but can you give us a quick breakdown anyway?
Yeah, I'll try it. We'll go for it. Yeah, so I mean, the basic argument is that we're actually not the top of the life food chain. So we always think we're the top, right? We're the best. The Earth is built of humans. But if you look at any like organization, if you weighed all of Amazon, the company, if you weighed it by people, Amazon's only going to be like 0.1%. So humans actually make up a very small proportion of our organizations, of all our systems, of everything. So my argument is that just like the cells that make up each the trillions of cells in your body that make you up, is you just take that to a higher level. So there's life, there's basically dimensions of life above us, and we make up just a larger organism. Is really how it goes. So as you look down, if you zoom into your hand, you're going to go down to different levels of life, is how I basically describe it. Like cells in your body, they just go about their lives. They're born, they die, they do their little jobs. They live their little lives at their dimensional level. Just like we were born, right? You're born, you didn't have a choice. You're born, you a social security number, right? Here's your job. You're gonna go to school. Like I hated going to school, but if you look, our systems it's all designed to feed the larger organism, if you will. And we even say it if you use the words like organism. So if you look at like the U.S., I use as an example, you have the different parts of the U.S. You have the borders. It's like the permeable membrane. They have border guards that they don't let in, any viruses or terrorist cells, etc. So as far as that, the point is, don't stop there. If we keep going higher in dimensional levels, basically you can extrapolate out, and you could say that potentially Earth is its own little cell. Right? It's actually the Gaia. John Lovelock, he basically made this proposal that it was Gaia is a one large organism is the Earth. But if you imagine now, you go even bigger, right? Just keep thinking bigger. The Earth could be its own cell, right? And of many other cells. So you have basically we're just part of a much, much, much larger organism that we can't even consider. Which is, if you think down to your cells, we don't even know how many cells make up a human body. I've heard trillions, I've heard hundreds of billions, but even then, we have no idea. So I think that the outer universe could be just as vast. And so basically dark matter, when we look up, and we've been trying to find dark matter for the last 40 years, what is this unknown force? What I think it is.
And so just to give people a background, so dark matter, no, that's okay. So the idea of dark matter is scientists need to theoretically come up with a reason why we have the amount of gravity we have, because mass or matter is what creates gravity. And so we don't have enough visible matter in the universe to theoretically understand why there's so much gravity holding things together.
And it's not just that there's not enough, Mike. There's only about 15 to 20% of the visible matter that explains the gravitational forces in our galaxy, at the very least, because we can only really check in our galaxy, right? So from our understanding, another 3 times what we could see exists somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of goes back to what Elizondo was kind of touching on, this idea that within our own bodies, we hold entire galaxies. Like the distance between some of these. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you the scale of it is so extraordinary, right? Mm-hmm. So the atom of the nucleus of an atom is relevant to the size of a pinhead in a stadium, in a giant stadium. Mm-hmm. So the first electron, or that first proton, is the exterior of that stadium, and then the nucleus of that is the size of a pin. So everything, and that's all inside you now. And so the scale of that is just
And then if you go Chris's way, that's all inside you now, and then we are that pinhead inside the atom, inside the fingernail that goes the other direction potentially.
Right.
where we could be the gut bacteria of a single skin cell on some schmuck somewhere who is inside the first atom of the next galaxy. It goes.
So when
both
you were little,
directions.
you guys used to line up the mirrors and stare at yourselves a lot,
Forever
right?
and ever. And then there was like Bloody Mary on one side and Candyman on the other. Both face back.
Boy, that's a sequel. Oof.
Yeah. Aaron Desario made a good point earlier. He said that we do not recommend using mushrooms while watching this show. We are not responsible for any bad trips. That we will not.
Gotcha, Chris said you're also triggered by anxiety of bed bugs. Thanks, UCR.
But that's okay, right? It knowing all this stuff, I don't think it really changes any. It doesn't change your day-to-day life. Even if it comes out
nicer to
like,
people,
aliens,
I think.
I don't know. I think we can
We're
still
all just
go
in
on.
someone's fingernail or gut, apparently.
Yeah, because if you're finding out what's real, you're not changing anything, right? Except your own thoughts on it.
Yeah, I had this conversation with Bottled Water the other day on Twitter because I was saying, what if the singularity?
I knew this was going to come up.
He's ex-military, and he's had a UFO experience, and we chat. He's a good guy. But I was talking to Bottled Water the other day.
Was it Dasani or Aquafina?
Oh no, Aquafina is an Asian
like
actress.
Old guys who have checkers names.
And so I was having this conversation because I brought up the idea: what if the singularity, the technological singularity, has already happened, and we're kind of viewing it from the past, and it's a future thing to happen, but it's already happened, and we're just kind of enveloped in this reality that's been created for us. It's kind of like simulation theory.
In the
but it's possible
horizon of the singularity, so we can like slowly absorb it from the outside, but never actually make it there.
Ooh, that
That's
sounds like that's a horrible dream, bro.
The thought.
Well, I just mean like it's like, oh, we're just you're on this treadmill, like the treadmill.
The event horizon, you never get there.
And that's actually a very interesting point. That's a really interesting point. Fuck you, Brooks. You just destroyed my analogy. But anyway, no, I was actually getting back to Chris's point, which is because I said, well, and people say, well, people would hate, they would lose their minds. And I'm like, well, why would they lose their minds? He's like, well, imagine if you were just given the reality that you've never actually touched your wife and it wasn't real. And I'm like, well, when quantum mechanics was revealed, we realized that, I've never touched my wife. Every bit of energy, her skin's reaction to my skin is simply our atoms repelling each other. There's not an actual physical touch. Sensory experience is already a delusion or an illusion.
It's a perception.
So it's a perception. It's a sense. It's not real. So I already know that. I still got to pay my mortgage. Like nothing's changed.
But so there's two really interesting thought patterns behind this, right? So you've got that one, which is, I believe this is not some weird solipsistic matrix-oriented existence where we're all just data yelling at each other through, binary.
Google.
So Google, same thing, right? So Google's just a bunch of ones and zeros to a certain point. Right. So that's one side. And then you got the other side, which is this all exists and I still can't touch my wife.
Right.
It's terrible all the way around.
But we have our senses, and our senses give us the sensation of it. So nothing really, just because I have a new theoretical framework for reality doesn't change the fact that I still experience reality through my five senses.
That's an excellent point. And I think the lesson learned here, kids, is wear a condom because you're never actually touching her.
I don't think
I've heard that too. That
we are not responsible for that. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, there's I've been hearing through just contact with people that in like NASA, for instance, that's one data point, and in the military, they're just not willing to accept that paradigm shift. Kind of like Luis was saying, is maybe that they're just not gonna believe it. Because it's such, they don't want that paradigm to change, right?
Right.
But they know it's the truth, right? This is like, if they know it's the truth, then they're not going to, then they can lie about it. Does this make sense? Because sooner or later somebody's going to find out. They can always say yes. Sooner or later the world will know.
It's a defensive refusal. Yeah.
Yeah. So why would I? Sooner or later they'll find out, because that is the truth. Why would I allow my paradigm to shift? If I just don't believe it, then it won't happen. It's like the never-ending story, like in reverse.
It's one of the stages.
Like
of
if
guilt.
I just don't believe
it's one
it.
of the stages of guilt, denial.
Yeah.
It's not just a river in Egypt.
Thank you so much, Alex Melius, for the $5 dono. Got to go pick up the wife from work. Peace out and love to you all. Thank you so much. And he's been a huge supporter of the Discord. He's been helping keep it alive when it was just like a struggling little baby and had no real voice. So appreciate you doing that, brother.
He was incubating the Discord.
Incubating the future of the Discord along with Matthew Riot. The GOAT, $3 dono. Thanks so much. Let my man's Lehto talk. Laugh my ass off.
The GOAT.
Christopher Lehto.
Talk, Lehto.
Yeah.
Lehto.
I did want to go just to continue
Lehto.
that. So, like, to continue the theory, right? Obviously,
Yes.
it's a theory. We haven't proved it by any stretch. But if that's the case, right, and we're just a part of this larger organism, then like in your body, right, there's many mechanisms in your body that make sure the cells don't get out of line, right? Or they make sure that they have enough resources. Your cells are just sitting there doing their little job, and then there's things bringing them, nutrients. There's blood cells bring them oxygen, etc. I think of these as like control mechanisms. So if a cell, if it's ready to die, basically it dies. It dies. Or if a cell is cancerous, right? So it's replicating, but it's not replicating with the right DNA. Then the body should kill it, right? Ultimately, unless it doesn't, and then the large organism dies, right? So it's in the large organisms, it's in its best interest to kill those cancer cells, right? So
Right.
that would be the same analogy for UAPs. So basically, we can't see them by design. Basically, it's elusive mechanisms that actually, or whatever, doing the same thing that do for your cells in your body.
So
that's
they would
why
be
maybe
like
we could,
like the T cells that would be inspecting, accumulating reconnaissance on what other cells might be doing and whether or not they're cancerous.
yes,
Ooh,
yeah,
that
exactly.
doesn't sound good for us, bro.
Very interesting.
No.
Well, because
Yeah.
cancerous is very, broadly defined there. In the case of the human body, as far as I'm aware, it just means you're replicating cells that don't do what they're supposed to. That
Yes.
doesn't necessarily mean that they could be discordant, which we tend to be.
But they
But as long
replicate
as
for their own interests. They're not. I guess cancer cells. They're not. They stopped voting for the main organism. They
they're
stopped helping.
they're
the
not
larger
part of the
group.
tribe anymore.
Yeah, they're off. They're
What
like
a-
a disgruntled employee. So they're not aligned with the main organism's
Right, well,
general
their
path.
DNA did not get properly replicated. They're bad copies.
What
they're
if?
they're.
Sorry, Lehto. Good, continue.
No, that's it. The intents are not aligned. That's all.
I was gonna say, what if T cells are UAP?
That's what I think Chris is implying.
Yeah, implying here, right? Like, I mean, this idea of like we're setting off these nuclear weapons within this much larger organism, and that largest organism defense mechanism would be, okay, go send some probes, go see what the hell's
Go
going
check it
on
out.
in that
Yeah.
cell. Maybe, oh man, are we the cancer?
Yeah.
Well,
No,
We're
You
a
blow my mind, guys.
ask a
You blow
vegan.
my mind.
we're a cell mass. They are here
I
to
think we're
determine whether
doing
we're
what-
benign or we're malignant or we're properly operating cells. And those are the three options, right? In this particular allegory.
Right.
I think we
NMUAP.
need some checkpoints. I think we get tweaked. I think we get like course corrected. Like your kids messing up. They got the wrong kids.
That's
as
why they shot
friends.
Kennedy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't- So maybe course correction. Obviously, it's a crazy theory. The other part of that is, okay, say they're interdimensional, right? They find a way to actually go between dimensions. So like Ant-Man, I consider, right? If you could go super small
Sure.
or
Down
super
to the
big.
quantum level. Mhm.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, well, maybe like we see it as these weird quantum effects, right? That's how we see quantum. But maybe it's just because we're looking through too many levels. When you look through a pool and you get like a different refraction index.
Parallax.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, what if it's the same there? But when we're looking at it, we just don't have we can't get the bits out correctly. So what we see is just quantum effects. Anyway, just a random thought on
like
interdimensional,
Oh, man, that's cool.
whatever.
Well, but you also brought up another point, and I think this is interesting too, is because people don't often think of when they think of interdimensional, they often think of like portals and things like that. But maybe you don't. I mean, you brought up the idea of not thinking like that, more thinking about on the level of scale. Right, dimensional
100%.
scale.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, we can see the dimensions. We can literally see them, and it's all about size. And then if you go back to it's basically vibrational. You kind of mentioned we don't actually touch. If everything's vibrational, then maybe it's just your size is based on your vibrational frequency. So
that would be.
So maybe there's a way you could go in between these dimensions
dimensional scale, yeah.
by changing size, and that's why we see these. You hear these accounts where the ship just materializes, right? Or it doesn't zoom in somewhere; it just appears. And then I was thinking, when we're just destroying atoms, like you mentioned, maybe we are just like destroying whole galaxy. Like there's like. The aliens that know are just freaking out. They're like, oh my god, like
right.
They blew up, Wisconsin or whatever it is.
No one's targeting Wisconsin, okay?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's got all the cheese reserves. It's very important.
Yeah. So just to try and think of that to open your mind, and then like the solar system, you talked about that, Michael, like the size of it. But are there any kind of analogs with our own cells, our own bodies? Is there a permeable membrane around the cell, around the solar system? So this is ways we could.
Within, right? We've got like an asteroid belt. We can get really weird with it if you want to.
Are you hypothesizing that maybe there are invisible membranes and that is the dark matter that we can't
Yeah, basically what we're seeing is, imagine if like a little cell in your body made some telescope, and is looking out. That's kind of if you imagine us in that situation,
right?
It would be kind of difficult to actually determine what's going on, and that's what our physicists say now. They're like, hey, we know when the Big Bang, whatever it is, 13.4 billion years ago, the universe started, and it just seems so ridiculous that we can make that statement, and then have any kind of hope for accuracy,
right.
Like there's no way. You have no idea. Like you guys are looking out with a telescope. I'm sorry, you don't know what you're talking about. It hasn't been that long. We've only had telescopes for like 100 years or something. I mean,
well, about 600 years. But
do you think the James Webb Telescope will help sort of clear some of these answers up?
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, that's what we need, right? It's just more data. I've been so pumped. I was pumped for the whatever you call it, James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, since 2015, man. I was like super excited. I just watched this astronomy show. David Butler, he's amazing YouTuber, astronomer. Just watched this whole series, and then that was coming out, and I was so excited. And then I was excited, and then they delayed it, and then I was excited, and then they delayed it, and now I just don't care anymore. I'm like, they're never gonna watch it. I'm just past it. When it's up there, I'll be so happy.
So Chris, back to your allegory there, because I think that's fascinating, right? So what you're saying is we are on some sort of a tiny little organelle within a cell. So that would make space the cytoplasm. Well, that would make us a plant cell, but regardless, right? So that's the cytoplasm. And then suns would be like maybe the mitochondria. We have like a galactic center that's like the nucleus of the cell, potentially, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But given our perspective, we can't tell that that's what's going on.
Well, and we can't see, like, I think the most fascinating part of your theory, because like this idea of scale has always been fascinating. Like that's something that is a mainstream concept. Like you see movies like Men in Black, and it shows you like the scale of the universe versus the human body. Like that's something, even though it's virtually incomprehensible, at least we can metaphorically understand what sort of scales those are.
Right.
But like, it's weird because basically, like, our maps just of this globe are typically very wrong perspective.
Oh, the perspective is terrible.
So if we think about what we have in our mind, having come out of elementary school with an idea of what the solar system looks like. It's
Right.
probably so very
Right. Well, not to absolutely no. That's such a great point, and not to mention like our conceptual idea of an atom. Like
scale.
remember
Oh,
in
yeah.
school how they were like they're like billiard balls, but that's not accurate at all. They're packets of energy and vibrating.
That's all we are. So,
They're not physical.
Yeah, it's probability fields. You know, because like I said, when you look at it, you know, when you observe it, it stops, and then it becomes a thing, right? You know,
that's
the
an
light
electron. Yeah.
particle effect.
Right.
Yeah, but when you look at it, you affect it. So when you're observing it, you're basically affecting it. Yeah. How can light be a particle in a wave? You know, it just
Right.
blows my mind.
That blows my mind. I will say that, you know, for a
because
long
it both
time.
is and it's not.
Yes. How can you be something but also not? That's my
Right.
problem. Like, I
And
don't get
something
it.
else.
You're
Right.
either something or you're not. You can't be both. I don't know.
Right. But it is in some weird way. And you know, and I think now I have heard that this is a bit of a misconception that we are caught, that the observation is causing the collapse.
Yeah.
But it's actually, yeah, I mean, we don't know, right? Because that's the whole idea. That's the whole shit storm of quantum relativity, right? It happens in a black box. Like we can't.
It's interfering.
What do you mean?
It's not causing, but it's interfering. Whether
I thought it was just measuring,
or it's causal. Well, yeah, to measure would be to interfere, but not necessarily to cause. We're going back. This is Schrodinger's cat, right? That's what we're talking about.
Right.
So checking to see whether or not the cat exists doesn't cause it to no longer exist or exist. It just interferes with whether or not it's existing. I just want to be very clear on that. Not
I
causal.
still don't get it.
but he never made the cat not exist, right?
Well, you can't, but you can't make it exist. It doesn't. It doesn't cause anything. It just interferes with whether or not it's existing.
This poor cat.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I guess going back to your point, Michael, is I don't know. You know, I guess I would ask that maybe people think about it and make it as a possibility. You know, and I see what you mentioned. And Avi Loeb, I was reading that yesterday in his book, Extraterrestrial, where like the solar system, right? We basically solved the solar system. You know, you learn it in whatever grade you learned it in, and you probably haven't really looked at it since then, you know? So you're like, solar system, check. You know,
Trying to imagine it without
taking care of
Pluto.
it.
Right. That's why people lose their fucking minds when you tell them Pluto's not a planet. They're like,
Okay, but then when you tell them that Pluto's smaller than Australia,
oof. You're hurting people.
Well, then the Plutonians, obviously.
Well, I mean, it was weird when we went to the Griffith Observatory, and when you're walking up to the Griffith, they have the entire solar system to scale. I don't know what the scale is, but it's you know, they have these large rings that go to the center point of this thing, of the sidewalk. Like as you're walking on the sidewalk, you can see the planetary orbit of all of the planets as you walk closer to the observatory, and Pluto's still there. You know, like, I mean, what are you going to do? Change the entire observatory, or, you know, or this sidewalk system because Pluto's not there anymore?
It's never disappeared. It was just relabeled.
It was relabeled, and we have larger dwarf planets than Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an ice sphere, yes?
It's a dwarf planet. It's probably
I think there's bigger moons around Venus.
There's larger moons both around Venus and Jupiter. Our moon is larger than Pluto. But it's not about the size, but fortunately Pluto is still there. As far as I'm aware, I haven't checked recently, but Pluto is at least still there.
Yeah.
It
didn't change the fact that it was there.
We stopped thinking about it.
Just quickly, I wanted to thank NMUAP.
I was going to say, I think this goes back to Chris's point, though. We who live in this solar system can't even tell if one of our supposed planets is there or not. So our ability to technologically infer what's going on in our own planet is probably questionable.
Yeah, the first time we went outside the heliosphere was just Voyager, right? In the last couple of years. I think it was
Voyager 2, and that was just a few years ago.
That's the first time, and I think the only time any craft we've sent outside of our solar system.
That's correct.
And then we were surprised by the solar wind. So it's actually moving through. Something's hitting. Our sun is protecting us from some sort of radiation or something out in the heliosphere, and that's the first time we punched through. But then we're still like, yeah, we know when the universe started. And it's expanding, and I'm like, dude, you do not know. You don't know. You're gonna tell me and I'm just not gonna believe you.
So my thought to that is, we can calculate it based on the information that we know about the space that we can measure, right. And I think that's like the most solidified you could make that statement, right?
Yeah.
Right, but think about how quickly we changed the names of dinosaurs. We're like, oh, we were wrong about that one. How long have we been making decisions about this? It hasn't been very long.
I would like to make a public service announcement that it is okay for science to change. That is the point of science. As we have new data,
I agree with
the more data we have, the more the science will change. So let's all be okay.
No, it's cool. I don't know what the 5-year-old is talking about.
Right.
Because he's giving me names of dinosaurs I never heard of before.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to Chris's point.
Dinosaurs.
That goes back to Chris's point. That goes back to Chris's point about how you mentally check that off and then you move on.
Well,
sorry, and you had a point about Avi Love. Real quick, UAP $5 donation. If you still owe $100K in student loans for information that turns out to be basic, wouldn't you lose your mind? Yes, but you still. But would you what would you do? You just stop. You just stop everything.
Isn't all information basic?
Okay, Chris, going back to your point, you're reading Avi Loeb's book. Check on the solar system.
Yeah, and he said he's seen the same thing in his career as a scientist. Is that basically they just assume they already know all these topics, like Oumuamua. That was his big thing. He argues it's extraterrestrial, or could be. It doesn't exhibit anything of all the other thousands of at least objects we've tracked. Not interstellar, right? This is the first interstellar. But he said the same thing, is that's one reason why they're not tackling this problem, or there's no scientific study of UAPs really mainstream, is that they already have it solved, right?
Right. We already decided it's not, there can't be such a thing. So why would we even look in that direction?
Why waste the money, the time, effort? Obviously they want to focus on science they think is important. Why would you focus on this? We already know it doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah, you remember that Einstein guy who was looking at those little atoms? They didn't do anything until you break them apart and stuff. Yeah, why waste time on stuff that doesn't matter?
Right. That doesn't matter.
Good joke there.
That was deep.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you.
That was deep.
all day.
The goat with the $5 dono. Serious contemplation of borderline idea. Expand our consciousness. Love the show. Keep it up. Thank you so much, the goat, for the donation. It's really fascinaning stuff. Sorry, for those of you who don't know, Luis and I are fighting over the controls. That's why things are coming in and out.
And I'm not going to touch anything anymore.
Okay, can I just? There's one more point of the theory I haven't covered. It probably not too long.
No, go for it.
Basically, that's talking about entropy. This idea of entropy. Entropy is disorder. So basically, we use it a lot in chemical reactions. So if it's more disordered on one side, the reaction goes towards more disorder. So like if you release a balloon, right? If you open a balloon, the air is not going to stay ordered in this shape. It'll expand, right? It goes to disorder. And so what I argue is that you can define life as it replicates matter, but it orders matter. It basically takes dead, disordered matter and then orders it, right, into the future. And it replicates. So I think we could look for life. We could by looking for decreasing entropy. So basically, where there's order, where we don't expect it, which is what I think could be going on with dark matter, dark energies. There's more order that we can't detect, like these membranes you kind of mentioned. Maybe some sort of membrane, but that would be it. Maybe look for life in that it orders matter or decreases entropy in like the scientific term.
So you think maybe entropy is a misunderstanding of the universe based on the fact that we don't have all the data, meaning that we don't have an understanding of what the dark matter is? Is that?
No, I guess what I'm saying is that so dark matter in the argument is life, right? So basically, what we're seeing is life, and what it's doing is it's ordering the universe, right? It's providing order, because what you mentioned about gravity, right, is there's not enough gravity, so that the galaxies should be flying apart, right? As they're spinning, they should be flying
the
apart.
large and small nuclear force are propelled by dark matter, or however you want to state it.
Okay. Yeah, this would be just for the, I guess, gravity in the galaxy term. I don't know about I haven't looked into the
so the large and small nuclear force only are the only explanation for why everything stays where it is.
Okay. Yeah, but then when you go further out, right? So they're saying that there needs to be 90% more matter there, right? To keep everything together, right? It really to keep it ordered.
Space where space is, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's basically we're seeing order when we're expecting disorder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so Leeuwenhoek, he's the guy who first found microbial life.
Leeuwenhoek. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Galileo, he was looking out with a telescope. Well, Leeuwenhoek, he basically turned it around and he looked the other way. And I think he was surprised by order. You know, he saw these little machines, these little ordered machines working around when he was expecting just to see, like, you know, dirt,
nothingness,
disorder, right?
Right.
It shouldn't be doing its own thing. I guess that's what he was surprised on.
Sure.
That there's little order down there. And so maybe we're seeing the same thing when we look up. You know, we're seeing basically ordered matter.
We're seeing ordered chaos. Reason.
Yeah. Yes. And they're basically saying that there needs to be more gravity. So there's the idea, dark matter, dark energy. I think they still don't know what it is. It's still a placeholder for we don't know.
It's a big question mark. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but it still seems like the question mark has already been answered by this other stuff called dark matter. You know, so it's
which we haven't been able. See,
right.
You'll never be able to.
Dark
see
matter is a placeholder, like you said. It is. It's the big X in the algebraic equation of why we exist.
Right.
Yeah. So we need to think of the other theories. You know, it's been 40 years. We haven't found it.
And the dark energy stuff fills in the other side of that. If you really get down into it, dark energy would explain like how quarks function, why they function the way they do, and then that's the large and small nuclear energy. And it is the basis behind it is precisely what you're saying. There is a lot out there that is happening, and we don't have the answers to explain why it's happening. So we are going to express them as thus, which is dark matter, dark energy. So I agree with you completely.
So it's like an X. It's like an algebra.
It's an X. And scientists are treating this terminology the same way that, you know, terms like heliocentrism were initially when we didn't know. I mean, these are concepts at this point, right? And they can sound like something that's very well fleshed out, but it's not. And even the scientists who are very deep in it will acknowledge that they're making scientific wild-ass guesses at best.
So can you tie up, Chris, this idea of entropy, like what your thoughts are on why, like how does this relate to like the scale of what you're talking about?
The scale. So
I guess that may be a bad question. I just mean like, so you're saying that dark matter helps us explain entropy. I'm just trying to connect the final dot.
So I guess just forget about dark matter, right? So basically, the idea is I argue that life, you can define life, right? We say what are cursors for life? Are we looking for oxygen? You know, signals of oxygen through a spectrometer on some far planet? You know, because it mirrors our physiology. Is that one way to look for life? Yeah. Or are you going to look like SETI, right? They're going to just listen for electromagnetic signals. So we're just going to receive because we think that they'll transmit like we do. You know, they'll use EMF to transmit, right? But none of those, it still hasn't worked. You know, so I guess I would define life as it's replicating matter. Right, so it continues to replicate into the future, so through time, and it takes dead matter and organizes it.
So, Chris, I think, and I apologize if I'm wrong here, but Chris, I think what you're saying earlier was life is creating order.
Yes.
And the reason that entropy is important is entropy is the idea that everything that is ordered goes to chaos. So basically everything becomes heat. If we're second law of thermodynamics,
Yes,
I'm
exactly.
hyper quoting that, but everything that is ordered goes to chaos. And your
Which
point,
is essentially
I think,
heat, right? You're talking about
is
is
heat.
essentially
It's
heat.
It's heat.
Yep. So that's exactly correct. So what I envision, to answer your question, Michael, is you have disorder, or heat is like the engine, right? So the sun basically powers everything in our world, it powers life essentially. So you have heat, right? But then you have the life basically takes the heat and cools it. So it's like the radiator. Yeah, because otherwise we'd overheat. That was John Lovelock's. He wrote this a great book just 2 years ago, or last year. He was 100 when he wrote it. It's like called Novacene. And in his argument, he says we're entering into the Novacene, which is basically you have these super intelligent, basically computers, AI, and they will be able to talk 10,000 times faster than us, right? We can talk 10,000 times faster than plants. Right? Plants are still communicating with signals, but very slow, right? It's just very slow. We can communicate 10,000 times faster than plants. So these new beings, whatever, they'll be able to talk 10,000 times faster than us.
Is
So
he
we'll
referring to like
basically be
transhumanism, or the machines?
Yeah, however you want to relate it. This was in the Novacene. He said they'll appear as ethereal kind of beings to us. Actually, you mentioned maybe we're past the singularity, but they said they'll appear as kind of whatever these beings, who knows? But going back to the main point is that it's just a theory. Is that maybe the heat is like the engine that powers growth, if you will, and then life is basically catches the heat and turns it into, it orders the matter, and then you could get to some continued growth, across different interdimensional levels, right? It's basically how you grow. I heard a crazy thought. It was like maybe we're all the same being, but we're seeing each other through different eyes,
right?
And so it's consciousness trying to figure out what it is. So you could have heat on one side and life on the other.
Right. Well, I mean, you could either, it's not a difficult argument to make, right? Because we are all parts of the same stuff of life, and we are all conscious, and that consciousness is simply, an ideation as an individual. Like I'm not, like the idea of being an individual is what my brain is processing by my senses, made up, but we're all made up of all the same stuff. So it's easy to argue that we're all the same stuff of the universe, expressing ourselves as individuals, when in fact we're all connected.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Seems
I mean,
crazy.
it's an easier argument. To me, that doesn't sound crazy at all. That sounds obvious, but
I don't find it to be crazy one bit.
Yeah.
But like the question is, like, does it mean something?
Well, right? I think it means that we spend an unsubstantially large part of our time trying to be such an individual that we don't spend any time trying to either if it is a host of some crazy kind, helping out the host. So we're not good red blood cells for sure. And if it's not, if it's a collaborative thing and we're all just part of a hive mind, then we certainly aren't trying to help out the colony and the community either. So our existential issue is that our existence isn't that freaking important in the first place.
Unless it's an expression of something the universe isn't, which is individual, like individuality and having an other. By creating individuals, and we're experiencing life as an individual, you're creating something out of the universe that didn't exist before. That's pretty special.
That's the beast with a billion backs, right?
I have no idea what that is.
It's a Futurama reference. It's the idea that we were created all to just suckle on the teat of the universe.
Yeah. I think if it's miraculously close to the truth or something, it would be, you try and look into the future to see where the main organism is going. Right. Like say I'm a part of the United States, right? I'm in this giant, large organism, which to me feels like I'm in a giant, large organism, right? Sometimes you just get crazy emotional effects, right? Everybody's just focused on it's like America has one point of view, you know, like that's all they can see, and it's what pumps out the media. You know, is through the information systems. Yeah, so I just think maybe if we can align, you know, you align yourself, you know, that'll be good for America. So you're going to do something that's good for it and not bad, or you'll go to jail, you know, or something like that. So if you can figure out what the future, you know, what the best course is, then you can align with it. If we can align our human goals with that same goal, this will ensure we actually are around in the future, which I think is questionable, actually, and not because I think it'll be more like we're just not needed. We're more drama than necessary for the organism, you know. So
that's an understatement.
You posed two very interesting questions there. One being using the analogy of our organism being America and us being the people, and I don't want to get too political over this, but is the trajectory of the organism beneficial to the existence of its, call us the gut bacteria or whatever we are of this great nation of ours? And then on the other side of that is
like 100 billion cells, you know, I don't care.
Something like that, right? So if that's the case, right? So we've got that one concern in one direction. In the other direction, is it not our job then, as the gut bacteria of this great nation of ours, to move it to what we believe is a greater direction?
Ooh, the American experiment. I love it.
I agree. Well, if you look, all the abductee accounts, all the UFO accounts, even the nuclear stuff, it's all like take better care of the planet. You know, it seems like that seems like the main message. If that's a crazy meme or something, I don't know, but it seems like that seems to be the main message, right? You know, stop lighting off nukes and take care of your planet. And I think maybe that, in my mind, that would mean that aligns with the main organism, right? Keep the planet working well. Keep it absorbing all the heat. We're going to progress. Everything will be fine. Just don't freak out, you know.
And in that case, it's what's best for us. Sorry, go ahead, Kristen.
No, but if we're fighting entropy by creating order, then you should feel really proud of yourself every time you clean your kitchen.
Wow. And
maybe that's why we do.
That's
an interesting psychological point. Like maybe that is why. I
feel like I'm fighting entropy every day. I have 3 teenagers in my house.
We are.
That's entropy. 100%. By
you order it, don't you? You order it. Yeah. You're the life. That's what we do.
Does entropy come with fries?
No. Well, that would be nice.
That'd be
At least
nice.
you get fries.
Chris, what do your ex-military's buddies make of you now? I'm curious.
I don't know. I was at the reunion last week. It was very interesting. Yeah. They were surprised. They were surprised.
Oh,
it was like, you know, United pilot, United pilot, United pilot, United pilot. And it got to me.
Surfer UFO guy.
What's wrong with United?
When you say YouTuber, nobody is expecting that word. It's like a hard word to say, you know. Maybe you guys have the same thing. You say YouTuber, they're like, excuse me? They never say
vowels. It's got way too many vowels in it.
There's always a question like, what is it? And then it was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, what's it on? And then that's another whole thing, you know.
Right.
I was surprised. They hadn't really heard of UAPs. You know, it's all Air Force officers, or a lot of them are retired. But just a few guys had really heard of it. And a couple of the airline pilots, a couple of my buddies had seen lights like I was talking about. You know, then I asked, hey, man, did you see any lights? One guy, he was looking out the window. He's the first officer, you know, the captain. He didn't really like him. He was just staring out the window in California. And he saw like these 3 orange lights on the coast. He said it was like 40 miles away. But then they do like this crazy maneuver. You know, Luis, you're talking about the drones. But they can't do that crazy maneuver.
Right.
You know? Yeah, they can do that, all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, I get it. But where it just flies off, like, or flies up into space, like he said.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, he saw it again, you know, because he looked over and he was like, am I going to say anything to this guy? And he was like, no, I'm not going to. I'm not saying anything. And so he's looking out and he sees it again. And he still didn't say anything. So I think you see there's quite a few like that. But yeah, overall, I'm definitely an outlier. You know.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, you know, even watching your most recent, I'm sorry, Brooks, I'll turn it to you once I get, even watching your most recent video, or the video I was talking about earlier, Chris, one of the things that stuck out to me is like, you really do have this grasp or understanding of like cultural control and like how we're kind of programmed as individuals, whether it's, you know, from your country or from your family or your parents or your school or your organizations, and how we have so many biases based on that. Like, you don't often hear that coming from people who were in the military, just because like they're like, it's almost sacrilegious to speak like that. I almost get that sense.
Well, I would say, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, but just from, not that I'm military, but I've got a lot of friends. But I would say that the mentality you're describing, Michael, tends to come from enlisted men. Officers come from a different mindset. From my experience, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong here, though.
I mean, I think it's more service related. But I'd say overall, the military is more conservative. You know, I think more conservatives go for whatever reason. It's you know, so you get that more political leaning. And then I would say the Air Force is probably the most liberal of the military, so it's still conservative.
And then the Navy,
but you have more liberal people. Yeah, and then I guess I would say I would kind of agree with Brooks just on a. I don't know for sure actually.
And again, that's just an observation from the individuals I do know. But I will also say one thing that I do, and I've had the great opportunity to meet several pilots that were military. The ones that I have met who have said that they have seen, whether they're willing to call them just strange lights or UAPs or whatever, the individuals who tend to be test flying things that are still in a pre-production environment, they're the ones who and I don't know if they're just flying different flight patterns or in different cap points, but they've seen things more than the individuals who are flying combat sorties or flying normal, you know, border routes or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think it's the mission matters a lot too. You know, I think on a test, they're more attuned. They're just they're kind of there listening. If that kind of makes sense. Like I mentioned that intercept mission before, you know, I'm not looking anywhere else, you know, really.
Yeah, you've got a target. You've got a target.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, I'm setting up my cock, you know, it's much, I don't know how hard you guys think it is, but it's very difficult, you know, when you get in there. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just focused on that target. You know, I'm like, that plane, I'm going to go ID it and shoot it, you know, like that's basically. So I'm not looking around, and you don't have that much time to just kind of think. Maybe when you're flying back, you know, so you basically do the intercept and you do your fight, and then you knock it off, and then you fly back to reset. So maybe flying back here, I think that's probably when they saw on the East Coast, you know, Ryan Graves, their squadron. I think that's when they see it. When you're kind of hanging out, maybe you drink some water or something, you write down notes. But yeah, so I think you're not normally thinking about it. You know, it's like your normal day to day when you're doing your job today. You know, if you saw something out of the corner of your eye or something, I don't know, maybe you guys would go and investigate, but you know, you're probably just gonna be like, whatever. It was just something off, you know, side of my eye or something.
Right.
I am curious to know how you guys come up with your call names.
The call signs. Yeah.
Call signs. What was your call sign? I just had curiosity.
My call sign. It's kind of a personal question to ask somebody.
You don't have to answer it, Chris.
Well,
Wow, Louise.
Yeah, well, here's why I asked the question, because me and Michael were talking the other day about David Fravor's call sign. Which
you caught it, right? I haven't brought it up, but if you bring it up,
no. Well, so I was like, well, I have a feeling it's got nothing to do with. Oh, what was Underwood's? I can't remember Underwood's. Balls. There you go. But I could see how they could get to that name. But my theory for Fravors was like, when other pilots talk about the way he flies, it's like, oh, that guy flies, it's better than sex. And so he gets the nickname Sex, but I don't know. I'm just guessing.
I can tell you, I don't know him. I've never talked to him, but so your call sign goes in the middle, right? So my call sign, I'm Chris Otis Lehto. And so Otis doesn't fit in it, but his, I'll just burn it for everybody. His is David Sex Fravor.
Yeah.
Right.
Sex Fravor.
Right. How do you come?
Sex favor.
Sex Favor.
Oh.
Tad Balls Underwood. The Navy has really bad ones, actually. They have the most politically incorrect call signs. But no, usually it's the dumbest thing you've done, Luis. It's the dumbest. The funniest story they can tell. So it's called a naming party. You get all the new guys together. You make this big list. You haze them a little bit, and then you give them a name based off the dumbest story that they've done normally.
Okay.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
So yours had something with sitting at the dock of the bay?
Otis, no, from the Andy Griffith Show.
Oh,
I don't drink alcohol. I don't drink alcohol. It's not good. So my call sign was Otis.
You had an Otis moment. Got it.
Yeah.
When you were younger.
Several, yes.
Oh, I'm so happy I asked that question because we were like, man, how did these guys?
I just burned it too. You guys didn't put it together. Sex Favor.
No, we did. No. We knew it was Sex Favor. Yeah.
Oh, you did. Yeah.
We knew it was David Sex Favor, but we never put 2 and 2. It was like Sex Favor.
We were trying to figure out why.
Yeah.
It implies to me that he's actually kind of straight, like a very straight guy. So the fact that his call sign is sex even makes it funnier, so they're like, "Where's
he's
sex?"
The least
or he's like
sexiest
not
guy.
romantic. Yes,
yeah,
like the least sexiest guy. So of course, they call him Sex Favor. Yeah, you always. What would be the funniest?
Because he does come off kind of nerdy.
Yes.
Wear these glasses and he's like, this is what I did and this is blah blah blah. He is the kind of nerd, so I can see how guys, a group of men, would be like, all right, yeah, he's sexy, not.
So mean. I thought we were against bullying, guys. Come on.
And I outed everybody too, because I hadn't heard anybody say, like, I noticed his call sign. I was like, oh, David Fravor. I'm like, okay, David Fravor. I knew him as David Fravor. Yeah. And then I heard his call sign later, and immediately, But the Navy has the worst. They have the worst call signs. The Air Force is much more. It's hidden, at least.
Above the board.
Yes. Navy, they have shaved ass dog, shaved dog's ass. I've seen just terrible names.
Marines are pretty bad for you, but they're
ass space.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I guess I've got to run.
We're wrapping up the show now. The GOAT $5 dono. Thank you so much. No message. The fry joke was hilarious. Thank you so much. The GOAT. We really appreciate you guys joining us today. Chris, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. I know you are extremely busy. Bye, Brooks. I know you were extremely busy, and so for you to spend this time with us is such a treasure. So if you could let people know how they could find you, how they could find your channel, what the best way is to follow you, that would be amazing.
Excellent. Yeah, I have Chris Otis 78 there. That's my Twitter handle, and then my name is Chris Lehto at YouTube. So I try and post at least once a week, and then I'm mildly active on Twitter. So I'll try and be more active. Sounds terrible out there. It sounds like you just get beat down if you're on Twitter.
Don't do it. Just stay on YouTube, promote your stuff on Twitter, don't engage. All right. Thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you very soon, brother.
No, it was great. Thanks, guys, for having me. Excellent.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Thanks. See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Brooks, I know you got to run. Great to have you as usual. Great to see you.
My pleasure.
If people want to know more about you, how do they find out? Is there anything they can do? They can.
I mean, I'll still maintain the Cocktails and Calamity Twitter, but that's it. So.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm under the radar.
All right. Well, we love you, and we really appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you soon.
That was awesome.
Anytime.
All right,
guys.
Later. That was fun.
That was really cool.
Woo! We learned new things about David Fravor.
Chad Balls Underwood. I mean, yeah, man. I mean,
well, no, you said sex, and I don't think Chris heard you say it, so he thought he was calling him out. But just so you know, Chris, you didn't call him out. We called him out. It's on us.
Oh yeah, we've called that name out a while ago. I noticed that. That was one of the first things I noticed when they were like, David Sex Fravor on 60 Minutes. I'm like, wait, what? That was his call sign? What is going on? Like, how did he get that call sign? It's something I've always wondered. So.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you guys so much for joining us today in the chat. It truly is a pleasure. Make sure you check out I'll play the Patreon on the way out. So if you guys want to support this show, if you want to support the Singularity Lab, you can, for $1 a month, $5 a month, you can go support us over there. And we are always on Apple iTunes. You can find the Singularity Lab and UCR on iTunes, Apple Podcast. You can find us on Spotify, pretty much anywhere you consume your podcast. You can find all of these there. What I
Don't
missed,
forget to like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, because today's interview was early. Normally we go at 4:00. Today we went at 1:00. Well, at least for me, PST. And so, if you don't ring that bell, you may not know. So definitely do that. Michael, his link tree is down below, where you can find the Discord, you can find his Patreon, you can find ways to support the show. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in the Discord, so come hang out with us. It's starting to be a real hoot.
Laura Sosa with the $1.49 donation. Thank you so much, Laura. It was an absolute pleasure today. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll catch you on the flip side
Tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow indeed. Do you want to know about the future? I do, and I know you do. Wait.
We got Daniel Otis.
We got Daniel Otis tomorrow.
Chris Otis Lehto today. So there you go.
Oh, damn. See, that's a meaningful coincidence right there.
Yeah. All right, play the thing.
Do you want to know about the future? I do, and I know you do too. That's why we do what we do, right here at the Singularity Lab, just for you. Do you want to know about stories about breaking technology? Science? Look right here, I'm looking at my sheet. Marty did it. Why can't you? Remember, this is a public access channel. We rely on your donations, so just hit the Patreon. So we can continue to bring you updated science and technology breaking news every single day.